Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for David, aka Preacher Man, here on Frazierchronicles podcast. I am Destiny, and I love to listen to Frazierchronicles podcast.
Good evening, everyone. This is David, aka Preacher Man, here from Frazier Chronicles. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor who is sponsoring our show on today, decalworld.com. And we have a special guest on with us today. Our special guest is Michael Gardner. He is from the Savage Unfiltered podcast. And Michael, how are you doing on this wonderful Sunday afternoon? How are you?
How are you doing, David? First and foremost, I want to thank you for allowing me to be on your show today. It's a great honor, and I'm doing tremendous. It's not too bad here in Florida. The weather's just right.
Oh, well, that's great. Same here in North Carolina. Great weather and great day for a podcast. And I want to dive right into this. Mike, can you tell everybody how you came up with that name, the Savage Unfiltered podcast?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, we started out with a few names before we eventually settled on the name now. 3 years ago, when I first got into podcasting, we started out as the Kitchen Angle podcast. Pretty much did it right off my kitchen table, and we had somewhat of a movement going on, with the name. And I thought, you know what, let's change it a little bit. 3-4 months later, we went with the Patriot Angle podcast, and that stuck for like almost a year and a half, 2 years. And then just earlier this year, we started, branching out to other topics and, other avenues in the industry. And I noticed, some of the content and material I'm bringing into the show was a little unfiltered, and it was more me. You know what I mean, David? It showed more of a demeanor from who I am as a person. And we settled on Savage Unfiltered just to fit the show a little bit better.
Well, that's awesome. Never heard of anything like you just explained. I know a lot of people do a lot of different podcasting, and sometimes the name does not fit. So yours fits just well. I had an opportunity to listen to some of your podcasts that you have put out, and a lot of it is, again, like you said, unfiltered podcast. And jumping in now, I want to ask you a question. And
Sure.
This is your question. This is your opinion. This is your makeup, and you can answer it how you would like. But if you were the president, and we're going to speak on inflation real quick. If you were the president, how would you handle inflation as of right now?
Oof. Well, obviously, I mean, you have to look at exactly what's going on in the country right now. You have to look at everything from, basic, big companies, small companies, large tech companies. You have to look exactly what's working and what's not working. Obviously, there's a lot of negotiations that have to be played out, with all of this. And, what we have right now in the country is a complete mess. It's a complete mess. It's not being handled correctly. We're having a lot of mix. Like I want to bring back the negotiations. We're having a lot of negotiations in Washington right now that are not being presented well, and that shows weak leadership. And we have a president right now that is completely showing weak leadership. That's not addressing the key issues. Inflation, I mean, right now is looked at almost like a 45, 50-year high. We haven't seen this since, the Carter days, almost going back to Nixon, just about. And, it can be fixed. It can be fixed. A lot of our, merchants, do come from overseas, and a lot of that can be negotiated well. And we're not seeing that right now, David. What I would do is I would communicate with the other leaders, overseas a lot clearer.
Oh yeah. And I would like to add to that, when it comes to this inflation, as you were just speaking on, the president not addressing the real key factors or issues. When it comes to this inflation, I want to turn to the rent. A lot of people that are out here renting and things like that, we're seeing a spike in prices where an apartment or a home might have, rented out before around $1,000. Now that same place is renting out for about $3,000 now. So, again, you have to, and like you said, you have to address these issues. And when we talk about rent, how is it out where you're at? How is the rent? Has it inflated, or have you seen any increases? Let's talk about that real quick. Have you seen anything like that, or?
Yeah, well, obviously your inner cities will always have the most expensive rent, because usually, this goes back to the olden days, like even my generation. I originally reside from New York, New Jersey area, and I could tell you, like even back then, the rents were expensive. But that's your inner city. But on the outskirts of the suburbs here in Florida, the rent isn't really going up, a lot. We do have a lot of mayors and, governors, of course, Governor DeSantis, pretty much working alongside of the mayors, both on the right and the left. So we're really not seeing, tremendous amounts going up, David.
Okay. Well, that's great, because a lot of times when people are out here searching for a home or an apartment to rent, they have this type of equation where they say, hey, we want you making 2 times the rent or 3 times the rent. So if you guys are not seeing that major increase, then you guys are in a pretty good position, as I would say. When it comes down to the food, have you seen any food increase prices, or are you guys kind of staying in the same place? And we're talking inflation, so just talk a little bit about the food prices.
Yeah, well, Governor DeSantis, he's doing as much as he possibly can, for the state of Florida. I noticed he just came out with some bills that he just signed just the other day relating to FEMA, Hurricane Ian that we had almost a month ago, and he's signing the bills to go into relief for Hurricane Ian. So he's trying to pull some state and federal funding for that. The groceries and the food prices, yes, I'm not going to lie. They are going up here in Florida. I just noticed the other day a bacon has gone up almost like 4 or 5% just in the last 2 weeks, which is crazy. That's just bacon. There's other, just to name a few, there's, the prices are going up, it seems like every week.
Yeah. So would you say, and I'm asking this because we're on inflation. Do you think, especially with the food prices going up, do you think that more people should start their own gardens? Do you think people should raise their own livestock? What do you think people should do in these scenarios?
Yeah, you're getting a lot of fear right now coming out in the country, and I get it. A lot of people are trying to turn to, home gardening and farming and stuff like that. I don't think that's going to be I don't think that's going to change anything, David. I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the episode, negotiations. Right. The president in Washington has to negotiate with these state and local leaders. Okay. Most of our, produce comes from the Midwest. A lot of it comes from, out of this country, mainly Guatemala, South America. We get a lot of produce from those areas. So if we're getting those produce, like 60-70% of that produce from those areas, why isn't the president on the phone talking with leadership saying, hey, can we do something? Can we come up with some type of plan of action? There's nothing being done right now at the federal level. Nothing. Everything is just, it's being over, and that's what's causing the inflation. The other countries are not going to work with us unless we have a president that's willing to work with their countries.
Exactly. So why do you think this is? Why do you think that our president, as of right now, isn't doing a negotiation? Why do you think that is? Do you think it's more so of the agenda that the president has, or do you think it's more to that?
Well, obviously, the president doesn't have an agenda. If he had an agenda, things would be done. We're seeing a tremendous difference between, this administration prior to the original administration prior to him. Everything seemed to go a lot smoother, and that's the result of leadership. That's what you vote in. When you vote in great leadership, you usually get great results. It's almost guaranteed. Leadership, you get the opposite. So right now, the result of what was projected in this last turnaround, President Trump said it, during his re-campaign in 2019 going into 2020, inflation's going to be high. You're going to have high gas prices. You're going to have high food prices. You're going to have high everything if Biden gets in. And I mean, obviously everybody looked at it as, some type of fear mongering. And actually the fear mongering turned out to be 100% true. I mean, this is what we're getting right now.
Exactly. And it's causing a lot of uproar in our cities we live in and our communities. And I think that a lot of people don't really understand what is really going on. All they're kind of doing is just living through this moment. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say, absolutely. I mean, obviously, like I said, I don't really want to be, doing name calling and this and that, but you have a president right now in the Oval Office that's showing, high levels of dementia. Just every elderly man and elderly woman usually gets it at some point or another of their life. And we really need to look at what's, in the best interest of the United States right now. We need to, come together as a nation. We need to press Nancy Pelosi's office and invoke the 25th Amendment on Joe Biden because he is becoming a national risk to this country every single day. Yeah. Everything, it has to be done, David. I mean,
exactly.
For the sake of our country, it has to be done.
Oh, yeah. And I think that we need to put the country at the forefront when it comes, especially with this inflation deal. Moving on, I want to talk about car prices, vehicle prices. Seems that used cars are the big thing now. Everybody's talking about used cars. They're putting the price of used cars almost at the price of new cars. Let's talk about you, for instance, and let's just put you in this position. If you were out buying a car right now, would you go new or used?
Well, it would depend on the location. It would also depend on, what I'm in market for. Obviously, there's a lot of Americans more than ever now second guessing everything. Whether it's food, whether it's rent, whether it's, buying a new home or, putting their kids to a school, everything is now being looked at like more than once. So right. I would David, I would look at, the type of car and go from there. I really couldn't give you a clear answer on that. I'd probably do used. I've always been a used car guy. That's just me.
Okay. And the reason I ask that question is because right now, so many people, and this is something that I have heard just sitting around different tables, being invited to different events. A lot of people are talking about the issues on the cars. Do I go new? Do I go used? And the reason is because, again, like I said earlier, they're kind of putting those used car prices almost close to a new car price. So it's like, do I go new or do I go used? So that's that. Now I want to get into the whole gas, if it makes sense, the gas prices. A lot of people are saying that, they're feeling the pinch at the pump. When we talk about pinch at the pump, where do you think would be a reasonable gas price to pay for gas?
Well, reasonable is looked at very loosely these days. I mean, right. Obviously, our great Keystone pipeline has been shut down now for going on 2.5 years.
Right.
If it was opened, in my personal opinion, a reasonable gas price amount would be closer, probably almost the same as we were living in the Trump presidency, where it was $2 and change. I mean, I know in California they're paying almost $7-8 in gas, which is crazy.
Oh yeah.
But I think they're doing this, David, because obviously you just mentioned before, which you touched on something very, very accurately, where they're pushing the used cars to new car prices. I think they're doing this in an attempt to try to push in more electric cars, because I think that's their market, that's their pitch, that's what they want to do.
Oh yeah, and I believe that wholeheartedly, and we're going right into that when it comes to the electric cars. They want everybody to get the electric cars, but I don't think everybody understands how expensive an electric car is. 1, accident; 2, insurance; and then 3, the battery. So when we talk electric vehicles, moving into that, would you prefer an electric vehicle, or would you prefer a gas operated vehicle?
Well, I mean, I would love to have an electric vehicle, but I think as a society, we're not there yet, David, because I mean, I don't know if you've been, looking at the news lately in mainstream media. They're they're not doing well. I mean, I'm seeing accident. They're exploding. The batteries are exploding. I mean, each battery now, I'm told it costs, almost like $5,000 to $10,000 a battery. That's an average car price,
Correct.
I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut in, but it's just like you have these cars that are trying to be rolled out in the society that we live in. And, they're being marketed as, they're safe and this and that. How are they safe? I mean, like what happens if you break down? Every car breaks down. The electric components go. You break down, there's not going to be a Tesla charging station on the side of the interstate. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's what I was just about to get into. When it comes to electric cars, we know more modern homes being built today. And even though the push is electric cars, they're not building the electric chargers. So the question is, how, if you were president, or if let's move you into a governor job, all right?
Okay.
You're the governor of Florida now, all right? Mike has been nominated the governor of Florida, and he has to come up with a plan on how to put in electric chargers for vehicles. How do you start?
Again, I don't think, respectfully, I don't think, if I was elected governor, I don't think I could fill the shoes of Ron DeSantis. Let's just say that. But if I was, I don't think we're there as a society. They want to push this electric car concept, which kind of ties into, AOC's crazy Green New Deal kind of crap. I just don't think we're there as a society, David. I mean, we haven't got to that point of technology to put all these, electric charging stations all over their place. I mean, I live, obviously, the folks that are listening to your show, your listeners, I live in Florida. So we have a lot of these Wawas, which have came down from the Northeast, mainly New Jersey, Pennsylvania. They're all over the place. And Wawa and Racetrack have came up with a program with Tesla to put all these charging stations at. Well, they work, but the problem is they're becoming a nuisance with people that prefer regular fuel cars. And, they get in the way, and, it's just, I don't know. To be honest with you, David, I'm patient to an extent, but I'm not going to sit there for, 6, 7, 8 hours to have my car charged so I can get at least, 3 or 4 hours out of it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that's what I heard. I spoke with a guy at Tesla, because I was just interested in finding out information about these electrical vehicles that they're pushing. And the gentleman at Tesla, he didn't work at Tesla. He had a Tesla. He was telling me that these electrical vehicles, you have to pay for different batteries. So there are batteries that give you 253 miles. There are some that give you, 400 miles. But as you go up in the miles, the price goes up.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was like, so is it, and I was just having a conversation. I said, is oil better than the electrical vehicle? And in his opinion, he said yes. And the reason he said yes was basically what you said. Why do I need to sit for an extensive amount of hours waiting for a vehicle to charge, which in turns make your trip longer than what it would be if you just had natural gas?
And, you know, David, people are doing it. I've seen, like, I was just at Wawa the other day, you know, and, you know, I was at, you know, Wawa, and then I was at another gas station that uses these charging stations, all the time. And there are people that are at these stations, and they will actually, like, come back, like, different periods of the day, and they'll come back at like 8 o'clock in the morning to see where their car is charged at, you know, the percentage. It's like, you know, when you go to charge your cell phone, there's like a percentage, you know, thing on your phone, and you can look at it like an indicator. There are indicators on these charging stations. And then sometimes they have apps on your phone where you can check on your phone to see exactly where your car is at, you know, like 60%, 70%. And people will come back and like, oh, my car is only at 70%. I can't drive it yet because it's only going to give me about 30 or 40 miles. Wow. I mean, this is the society, folks, you want to go to. You want to go to this where we are limited to driving. I don't know about you, David, but I'd rather go fill my car up with a full tank of gas and get about you know, 4 or 5 hours before I have to fill it up again. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Same here. And that's why I just kind of was like, how do people feel about this election? Because everybody wants to talk about the clean air and limiting natural resources and things like that. Like you said earlier, we're not there yet. And I don't understand why other people don't grasp that concept that we're not there yet. I don't.
Yeah, I don't think that I don't understand how they're going into this clean air crap where it's like, oh, these cars are going to reduce carbon fiber and carbon emissions and this and that. Okay, but is it going to solve everything? No, you still have other things that are creating, you know, pollution in the air, refineries, factories. I mean, how come we're not looking at that? You know?
Exactly, and that's where I get a little bit concerned, because I'm like, we're utilizing cars as the main focus as the way of clean air. Just like you said, factories have been known or said to cause more pollution. So I'm not understanding what their real focus is. I know that maybe there's a hidden agenda there. Maybe. I will say that. So moving forward, unless you wanted to add to that. Did you want to add to that one?
You can move forward, because I'm not a big fan of this electric car Tesla kind of crap that they're trying to bring in.
I'm not either. So I want to ask a question, and I want your opinion on this one. When it comes down to the question, which is still ongoing, we're headed for another presidential election. The question: did Biden and his administration steal the election?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if you can't see that, you know, for some of your listeners, I'm sorry if it offends you. I'm sorry. You're blind as the next person sitting next to you. I mean, not in my lifetime, or probably anyone's lifetime, we could imagine these crazy machines being rolled in 2019. You know, they were like, oh, we have to bring in Dominion machines because COVID's going to kill everybody. I mean, come on. Come on.
Exactly.
I still see people wearing masks today. And I mean.
Oh, yeah. Same here.
Yeah, I think the 2020 election, David, I think it was a complete sham, and you know, it's biting them. You know, it's biting them in the ass, if you ask me.
Exactly. And that's the reason I'm asking, because we're moving into a new period of an election. We're almost there. We're almost there. And when we talk about stealing the election, how do you foresee the next election going? And I just want your opinion on how do you see the next election going?
Well, I think that they're going to go another approach to it. And obviously the Democrats are seeing this because if I may add this here, that with the Dominion machines and the mail-in ballots and all, I know the state of Florida, some of that has changed very drastically. Ron DeSantis here has initiated a change in mail-in ballots. It's not going to be used the same way it was in 2020. I know Kay Ivey of Alabama and Greg Abbott is pretty much on the same jump span as Ron DeSantis. So those are three big states, and there are other states that are pretty much jumping on the same bandwagon. And the Democrats are losing, base right now in everything that they're doing. And that's pretty much their baby. That's their golden goose right now, David, is that mail-in ballot. I mean, I think that's the only way they can win and the only way they can really cheat the system.
Right. When we look at, and we're going to go talk real quick on voting or the ballot, how do you think the election should really be when you're doing a vote? Should it be more so you go in, you cast your ballot, and you call it done? Or do you think that there should be this whole mail-in ballot type of thing?
Well, here's my question about it, David. Okay. Why did it change? Why did they have to come up with a new system in 2020? I understand that they were doing the whole COVID thing as an excuse. Come on, guys. We have to understand that. I mean, that was used as an excuse, COVID-19. It was brought into play like right in the middle the beginning of the 2020 election. They were like, oh, we have this disease from China and this and that. Okay, we still haven't understood the whole origin of it. And Congress in Washington really hasn't came out to the general public and said anything about COVID. It's kind of been tucked under the rug for the last 3 years now. And I know there's some things, some accusations coming out recently with Dr. Fauci. He's going to be testified, I think tomorrow or something. But that's another episode. But I think I think things are going to be done differently. I don't understand why it was changed in 2020 and why they thought they had to change it in 2020. It's worked for the last 200 years. Going to a ballot box, casting your ballot, and then that's that, and then walk away, and then you go on with your life. Why do we have to change that? I don't understand that.
I just think, and I'm just going to throw my opinion on the change is maybe they wanted to maybe fix elections. That's my guess, because my opinion, I'm always going to put who they want in there.
Yeah, but why do they have to change the elections? Like, what was wrong with the elections? Like, I don't understand, and I'm not trying to question you or second guess you, but like, why is the original process that has worked for 200 years? Okay, why does that system have to change? Like, you cast your ballot, you put it into a secured box, you have poll workers that are screened out by federal databases to make sure they're not criminals and this and that, and they're going to do the right thing for voter integrity. Like, all of a sudden, the voter integrity was looked at a lot differently in 2020 because of COVID. Like, I mean, COVID's gone, folks. It's there's no more COVID here. I don't know if you want to believe that or not, but it's gone. There's no such thing as COVID. I don't think there was ever such thing as COVID. But I mean, why did they have to change that? I don't understand that. I really don't.
Exactly. I'm on the same page as you as there's no more COVID. I'm on the same page. I don't think COVID was here. I think there was some, again, I always say hidden agendas. People wanted to, and people that were in high places wanted something to change, or they wanted something to pan out the way they wanted it to, and they went in that direction. Last, as we start coming to a close, I just want to talk briefly on leadership. You touched on that earlier in the podcast segment. And I want to talk about leadership. And the reason I want to talk about leadership is because it seems that here in America, we're lacking leadership kind of in all places, the workplace, and just everywhere. So I want to talk leadership. How do we get leadership put back and restored back in here in America, in our workforce, in our presidential office, in our governor's office, in our Congress office? How do we get that leadership restored back into place?
Well, it's going to be hard. I'm going to tell you that. It's going to be hard to try to talk to the average voter today because uh, what they have done to this country is they've manipulated us three ways to Sunday. I mean, with COVID, with masking, with social distance. I mean, everything. I mean, our country is more divided than ever. I was just reading a recent article that now certain scholars and people that write these articles are saying that our country is probably more divided now than it was during the era of Lincoln. And I believe that. I believe that. I see a lot of broken diversity in this country, a lot of division, a lot of that race card being played out, especially in politics and voting. It's being almost as a political weapon, and it's terrible. To get the correct leadership, it's going to take a lot of work to convince the American voter, because your average American voter, David, they don't know who to believe. They don't know to believe, people like Donald Trump or, Lindsey Graham or Ron DeSantis or anybody, even Joe Biden, the current president now. They don't know who to believe because they go from one scenario to the next scenario. I say it on my podcast all the time. I call it the flip-flop scenarios, and that's what's going on. So it's going to be very hard. It's going to take a lot of work to get this country back in order again. I think with 2022, I think if we get the right leadership back, possibly looking at another like 10 years before we get back to somewhat of normalcy.
Right. That's going to be a long time.
Could be longer than that, Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it takes finding, like you said, the right people, the right candidates, and getting the right people into position so that they can bring about that change within our workplace and within our country. We're going to move into wrapping it up. I want to thank you, Michael Gardner, for coming on and joining me on today's podcast.
Absolutely.
I would like for you, if you can, if you will, to tell everyone where they can find you, where they can listen to your podcast, if you have merch, anything of that nature.
Okay. Well, yes, you could find me just about everywhere. I think the best way to find me is just search Savaged. It's SAVAGED, Savage Unfiltered. And we pop up all over the place. iHeart, Spotify, Google, Apple, Amazon Music, just about on every major podcast platform that there is, and growing onto other platforms every single day as we speak. Merchandise, we will be coming out with a merchandise website after the new year, as well as a brand new website. So that's in the works. You can also find me on YouTube. We created another channel on YouTube, so we're slowly trying to grab some subscribers. I highly suggest check out some content that we're plugging in every day there on YouTube at Savage Unfiltered Podcast, as well as Facebook and Instagram, and that's pretty much it. We were on TikTok and Twitter, but they pretty much pulled the plug on us for misinformation.
Well, that's our show for today. All my listeners, make sure you go and please follow Michael Gardner on the Savage Unfiltered Podcast. Again, Savage Unfiltered Podcast. He's on every major platform. He's also on YouTube, and he's also on Instagram. So make sure you guys go follow him and subscribe to his channel as well. And before we get out of here, I want to thank all my listeners all around the world, international as well as here home in America, for listening to the Frazier Chronicles podcast on this afternoon. Again, Michael, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for having me, David.
Yes, sir.